Hello, my name is Natalia, and today we are launching a new series of webinars dedicated to private equity jobs in Luxembourg. And as you probably know, our motto is matching talent and money. And we always see so many people who would love to move to Luxembourg and work here, but they just don't know what to expect because Luxembourg is not such an obvious and a popular destination. And we wanted to clarify the situation of job opportunities in Luxembourg a little bit, and just answer some questions which could help young people to find the job of their dreams in this country. And as an association, we always organize trainings and masterclasses for our members so they could improve their skills. And we are also launching a new initiative, which my colleague Stefan Pesch will shortly describe before we begin our webinar. And of course, while we are talking, you are very welcome to message us in Q&A section, and we will try to answer your questions as well. Stefan, I pass the word to you.
Thank you, Natalia. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be with you now. Very quickly, and before we start your webinar, I just wanted to highlight that talent acquisition and development are important priorities for our association. And that's also the reason why we are starting now in a few days some LPEA trainings with selected experts and lecturers. For example, we will host Cyril de Maria, renowned PE specialist who is combining academic expertise and practical experience this Wednesday with the first training at 1 p.m. on the macro private equity outlook, secondaries, and also co-investments. In parallel, we are also working on a training academy, which should begin early of June, first week of June, and will include PE foundation courses, different modules on impact investing, ESG, risk management, and also potentially venture capital. So stay tuned for more information, and I wish you now a nice webinar and hope to see you soon again.
Thank you, Stefan. Andrew, let's begin our interview. And first of all, I would like to ask you, so you started your career in HR, as I understand, 16 years ago, and you were living in United Kingdom before.
Yes.
And yes, and so my first question is that why did you move to Luxembourg?
It's a great question, actually. Yes. So in terms of my career, I was working in London just before 2008, actually. And I thought, this is what do I want to do with my career, in fact? And I was always planning, what do I want to do for the next 20 years or so? And recruitment is what I was passionate about and enjoying. And certainly there was a lot of opportunity in London. I happened to have the company expanding throughout Europe and had the opportunity to go abroad and actually work in Brussels for a start, actually. So I worked in Brussels, and then I saw there being potential growth and saw Luxembourg as being the operation that I wanted to be part of. At that time, I didn't expect to stay here for the next 12 years. I think like most people in Luxembourg, you normally say, well, I'll give it a year or two to see how Luxembourg is. And believe me, 2008 was a very different time to live in Luxembourg. From the infrastructure here, and certainly the private equity world was very different over 10 years ago here as well. So yeah, I didn't expect to stay here for so many years, but after 12 years here now, with 2 young kids, certainly very happy, and I do plan to stay here for hopefully many more years as well.
I see. So as I said in my introduction, I think that there are many people who would like to move to Luxembourg as well for a job, but they are not sure like what to expect here. And my first question is that what do you think are the expectations of employers here? Like what do they expect when they want to hire someone?
Yeah, sure. So it's I suppose the expectations rely on different companies, especially from the private equity sector, on really what their company's values are and how they see their business growing and developing in Luxembourg. And when you are looking to recruit from also the people heading up the operation, that's depending on how they drive their Luxembourg operation as well. How the employers are changing their expectations really depends on how they see the future. And we've seen that develop over the last, especially 5 years, with growth, with further ambitions for Luxembourg and further development. So the expectations are for young people very high, in fact. I mean, it's a very desirable sector to work in. There's a huge amount of interest, and you've seen that interest only develop stronger and stronger during the last, or even over the last 10 years, it's just got much bigger. So I think the expectations are they want the creme de la creme, and the way they want the highest educated individuals with the strongest background, and also the desire to work in private equity. People really, if they're looking at their career, I think employers want people that are really structured about what they want to expect in their career, how they see the 5 years with their career. If they're not sure, that can really raise a particular red flag if private equity or the particular career route is really for them.
And you know, for like you mentioned education, and is it important that people who come here, is it important which universities they graduated, and is it important if they have any additional certifications, if they have the will to study further?
Well, yeah, it's an incredibly, as you've probably seen, the talent war has been going on for quite some time in Luxembourg. There's been a huge demand, and that's made it also quite competitive to find the right jobs and the right candidates. So people that are achieving have been I suppose they've been attending the right business schools, the top business schools, having the right education, or the desire to learn and take a qualification that is relevant for the private equity sector. So we've seen people coming in from the Big Four that would have been ACCA trained or going through a qualification. We've seen people that are looking at the CFA and training themselves because that's the career route which they believe is the right career choice for them. And I suppose it's having a clear structure about what they want to achieve and the desired outcome of their career, which is always quite tough. I think when you're graduating, some people are really not sure, and perhaps this is a good webinar for that. And I'm sure many webinars will provide more information about the private equity sector and really what you can expect as an employee and how you can see your career developing. But to answer your question, yeah, I think the expectations are changing. People need to continually learn and develop. It's not just acceptable to attend a good business school and then expect to roll into a private equity firm. People are looking to see really what are your desires, how can you see yourself developing. The soft skills are also an important factor as well as the hard skills, but qualifications are certainly one of the most important factors that people need to attend and take on board.
And what about the languages? Because I know that there are many people who are always asking like, if it's necessary, let's say, to know French, or is English enough?
Well, we live in Luxembourg, I suppose, so having more languages is certainly a competitive advantage. Naturally, a lot of companies based outside of Luxembourg with headquarters in the US, London, or Paris, that's where they are really looking for desirable languages, especially in their own mother tongue. So if you're working closely with the US, then making sure that individual is fluent in English is absolute requirement. The same with obviously the UK as well. So quite an Anglo-Saxon approach there, but it depends on the company's background. We've seen individual or companies where they are looking for additional language skills more than the normal English, French and German, where they perhaps have looked for Swedish or Polish to complement where they're actually investing in. So having some of those additional language skills can be certainly an advantage depending on which private equity house you were targeting. Right. But English is an absolute requirement for the large majority. I think if you're not fluent in English, then that can be a challenge from what we look at the same time.
Okay, I see. And what I'm also interested in is what about the people who are local? Like, do you think that people who, let's say, graduate from the University of Luxembourg, do you think that they prefer to stay and work here in Luxembourg, or do you think they often move? And are recruiters and local companies interested in hiring locals? Or maybe more, or maybe they're more focused on other countries?
Yeah, I think it depends on again on the individual. If you're based here in Luxembourg, that can be an advantage, and we've seen a large increase, as you've seen in Luxembourg, of the population here of people looking to attend a Luxembourg institute or a Luxembourg university to develop their skill set here and qualifications. That's, in my opinion, it's helpful, but if someone has attended one of the top business schools in Europe, that still keeps them on par with what employers would be looking for. I think it really depends again on what's the background of the individual, if they brought in internships, or if they've managed to acquire or take on internships in industry, which is relevant to the private equity sector, or indeed within the private equity sector. These small points can really be a competitive advantage. So just attending the Luxembourg University or taking the additional qualifications is certainly valuable, and it's great to hear that you're starting to manage e-learning as well, and I think that can be certainly a real good advantage for individuals and professionals looking to continually advance their career as well. So in theory, in essence, yes, I think it can be, it's really depending on each company, the background. If you're based here and can meet locally, you can network as well. And I think that's really a good advantage for any individual seeking an opportunity to grow their career. I think if you're outside of Luxembourg, the question will be raised always, what is it attractive about Luxembourg over other jurisdictions, and why would you want to develop your career here for many more years? But if you're already based here, naturally, that question is quite clear, hopefully.
And is it often that like young people join private equity right away? Or do they usually come from like finance in general, and they move to work in this particular area later?
I think that would be the dream for most people graduating, to go straight into one of the top private equity houses. Unfortunately, that's not reality a lot of the time, although I've seen in recent years some larger institutions in the US have actually started career graduation fairs actually to attract people straight into their firms. In Luxembourg, we've seen a lot more people entering from the Big Four or the corporate service providers, who have gained an understanding of private equity, have a desire and interest in that sector, and really built up some good knowledge and experience, perhaps auditing or accounting or finance related experience, which can then really give them a good advantage into what to expect when they would choose to work in a private equity firm. So having some experience, and that's what I mentioned about the internships. If you haven't already got experience, applying already to get an internship can really be a good benefit to gain valuable insight into the company, and it can also be possible that you would then gain direct entry if you're able to prove yourself effectively, that you can then be potentially offered a job in the longer term. So there's various different career routes. The Big Four is probably where we see the large majority of people coming from. And as I think in recent webinars that I've listened to, it's a very resilient business, especially in the current time. They're constantly recruiting, and that's a really good school for people that are able to then take that experience into one of the private equity houses in-house.
And do you think that Luxembourg is better for experienced people, or is it also good for young people? Let's say if I'm young, is it better to get my experience somewhere else and then move to Luxembourg, or can I come as a graduate?
I think if you've got an intention and real interest in living in Luxembourg, now is the time to come. I mean, if you look at the recent growth and the anticipated growth of Luxembourg, I think we're cautiously optimistic still of the future, even with the current crisis. And I think that's something with anyone looking to develop their career, Luxembourg will continue to develop and grow. I think there's lots of very interesting opportunities, and it depends again on your career and what you're looking to achieve. The big financial hubs naturally have had perhaps wider scope of exposure in private equity. Luxembourg office, or I suppose, has been more driven much more on back office historically activities, so much more finance, accounting and legal. But we're really seeing now a trend of further growth in private equity houses, that they're developing their roles to be much broader, to have more exposure to investments, to valuation, and that's really attractive for people entering their career to see that this is a growing sector in Luxembourg, and they will consider that they can learn a lot more in the longer term than perhaps they would in their own country. So I think if they want to be part of that growth, then now is a great time to come to Luxembourg.
And let's say if I'm a young professional and I'm coming to Luxembourg to look for a job, do you think it's better to go through a recruiting company here, or do you think it's better to contact the companies directly?
That's a good question. Well, naturally, being a headhunter, I suppose I would always say that you should come naturally to me. And I think generally coming to a headhunter, we can normally give advice. I suppose that's the one thing we're able to give, a broad overview of the market, what we see from companies, the trends, the culture, the backgrounds of a broad number of different companies. Of course, if you have contacts in the market, then please exploit those as well, and you can apply directly. You will see a number of firms do advertise directly, but I think I'm probably slightly biased because it's the industry that I work in. But if you go through a headhunter and they are specialists, they will know this sector inside out. They will know the contacts. They will know where there are opportunities. They can provide a lot more insight into how you can develop your career with each private equity house in Luxembourg. And that's much more perhaps valuable than just applying blind to a company. But of course, I think you've got to look at different options. But naturally, if people are looking for advice, first of all, then seek a specialized and recommended headhunter or recruiter that can give you insight and also guide you through the recruitment process all the way through to an offer stage. And that's something that you don't get if you apply directly.
Okay. And well, I assume you get many CVs every week. And is there something that alerts you when you open a CV and you look at something and you think, oh my God, this is not going to work?
Yeah, we've seen quite a few CVs in my time, I suppose. So there can occasionally be some red flags, or I do constantly get surprised actually by a number of CVs, good and bad, on how they're representing themselves. And I think always seek guidance when you're preparing an application. There's a various amount of different resources locally and internationally that you can seek to really write your CV correctly. But I think, yeah, for red flags for initially, I mean, always be prepared to write clearly about your experience. I think the presentation is clear that's got to be as good as possible to interest the individual when they're certainly opening up your CV. If it's not presented well, clear and concisely, that's going to be a first red flag. Even if you have great experience, a great profile, a real desire, if it's not clearly presented, it's difficult to get that message across. So I think making sure your CV is clear, concise, well presented, dates are clear, and there's no kind of, as we call it, skeletons in the closet in a way. There's no missing information. The dates are all matching up, and your CV has got a clear structure. I think that's half of the battle when you're writing a CV. But of course, contact me if you want any further advice, and I can give a bit more information on how you can structure your CV, especially for the sector in Luxembourg.
Well, I have I just thought about something. Did you ever come across that people actually don't write the real things in their CV?
That's a good question as well. Yes. It does unfortunately occasionally happen in the business for anyone, and that's something which is unfortunate. If people have felt embarrassed that they've maybe finished a role slightly shorter than they anticipated, or they had a gap in their CV, it takes us a little while to uncover that. But I would say be honest, be clear. If you have any gaps in your CV, make it clear to an individual. Some people assume that they just say, well, I just thought I'd fill in the gap for some reason, and felt that they should extend their employer or their previous employment by a month or so. That doesn't work. I mean, they need to really be clear and honest in your CV. Never assume that that's the right thing to do. You've really got to be 100% clear. If it's not clear in your CV, and anyone does manage to get through the filters of interviews, it will come out later. So a word of guidance is always to make sure your CV is 100% truthful, honest, and clearly laid out as well.
Okay, and which are the most popular jobs in our financial sector, or like on your opinion, like the most, it may be in different, not only in terms of the private equities themselves, but also maybe service providers who work for the business?
Yeah, I think people are always looking at their career. They want the right opportunity. We're seeing how employers have the right working environments. What's right for that individual? That's really something that we would have to discuss. What can be right for one individual can be wrong for the other, from the manager, from the culture of working, from the actual day-to-day tasks. So I think it's really crucial that every professional individual, when they're seeking a new career change, is really as clear as they can about what they want to achieve now and in the longer term. Indeed, if people are outside of Luxembourg working and they've not gained so much exposure already in private equity, the corporate service providers can really be a good school as well, and that's somewhere they have grown over a large number of years, and that can be certainly an area where they can build experience very, very quickly in a great industry which has been growing for some time as well. So I think it's really depending on each individual, what they believe is right from their career. And I think young professionals perhaps, I mean, they always want to, perhaps more impatient than people of years ago. They want to develop quicker their experience, and perhaps would seek opportunities to move more in their career than perhaps years ago. And that's the way the world is changing. That's the workplace is also changing to adapt to that new way of working as well.
Well, then, I have my last question before we continue with the Q&A, which is obviously we have this situation with COVID-19, and I wanted to ask, how do you think this crisis affects the job market in Luxembourg at the moment? Are there less job opportunities? Do you think that people can still hope to get jobs here, come for internships, etc.?
Yes, also a very good and relevant question, given the current climate. Yeah, I think it's certainly, I mean, Luxembourg's seen a boom and growth for so many years now, especially within the private equity sector. As I said earlier, I do believe and remain cautiously optimistic of the future as well. I think coming to Luxembourg is and would be still a great career move for many young professionals as well. I think the current crisis or challenges that we're facing is making people question how they interview, and naturally people are having to adapt much more, like we are today, doing webinars instead of face-to-face events. People are now adapting much quicker to having video interviews and making decisions over video, which has not been the case for many years in Luxembourg as well. So conducting the whole interview process over video and making the final decision has been happening, and will continue to happen in the coming months, perhaps years. But I think employers have been able to adapt their hiring strategies to onboard remotely, and candidates also have been working out how they will be onboarded and also how they adapt to a new organization remotely is a new challenge as well. So I think all in all, yes, it's a more challenging time currently. Employers are still recruiting, and I think it will still be an area of development in the coming months. We're still seeing companies making decisions now and are hiring for the right talent as well. So I think now is still a good time. I think that there will and still will be opportunities here. So if you're interested in Luxembourg, then if you can find the right opportunity, now is always a good time.
Okay, and we have a couple of questions in the Q&A. So the first one is there a specific characteristic to the PE market in Luxembourg compared to London?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because we do see people looking at both markets and seeing London as an area where they can perhaps get more involved with deals, investments, and see a slightly different career route historically than they would have done in Luxembourg. I think naturally with the language skill set here, there is a different requirement for a number of different positions in Luxembourg. Where employers do seek a broader skill set of languages on top of the experience that they've gained. And in London, I think there's also been a higher need for qualifications previously. That's also now more relevant in Luxembourg, where people are only being taken on if they haven't been able to achieve a certain qualification. They will be rejected for particular roles, because now it's actually a requirement instead of an advantage.
And the next question is, are there currently many jobs openings in the front office in Luxembourg?
Unfortunately not at this stage. I think there's been a drive for many years in Luxembourg to bring more front office roles across to Luxembourg. I think given the Brexit and different requirements through Luxembourg, that is something which companies are now looking to do. It has been discussed for some years, but still a lot of those front office roles will be based outside Luxembourg at the moment. But we have seen a handful of companies that are bringing some really interesting roles across to Luxembourg. So that is something that I do expect and hope to see in Luxembourg. I think it will make it much more attractive in the longer term if some of those roles are based here as well. So to answer your question, there's not so many of those roles currently, no. But fingers crossed, it can change in the future, and we can open up those roles here.
And going back to languages, so do you think that Luxembourg still prefers the candidates to be bilingual or trilingual in the service industry of private equity asset management?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's going to be an advantage, of course, to have more language skills. However, you still need to be fluent. I mean, making sure that your level of English is needed, especially if we're getting on video calls with the US or London, with senior individuals and senior professionals. They will be testing to make sure that your English level is certainly impeccable. So if there are weaknesses to have, then they will make sure that they exploit those over a video conference. But having additional language skills can be useful. It's not a requirement for a number of firms, because a lot of the firms' international business language is English. But if you're French and speak fluent English for a number of different firms, that's also a positive point as well. And locally, of course, if you are able to speak a number of different languages and internally with the team, you would stand a good advantage as well to work and integrate into a number of the firms here with the more languages that you speak.
And going back to your phrase about soft skills and hard skills, so how do you check them, and which are more important? And yes.
Yeah, so in terms of the soft skills, I think it comes from years of experience as well. We've worked in three different countries with over 15 years now of experience in recruiting and interviewing people. And I think when we when we interview, we're also gaining valuable experience in what companies are looking for. And what we need to do is to make sure we understand the companies that we work with, and exactly what their culture, their experience, and the soft skills that they're searching for. There are and will continue to be a number of assessments that individuals can take and employers can give, and that really gives a good indication into helping a headhunter, recruiter, or HR manager, or a hiring manager more useful information that they can test to make sure that they are bringing in the right person with the right soft skills at the same time. Because people can make, I mean, we're all humans, we can make mistakes as well in meeting an individual. But I think now with technology, more assessments, and looking at the previous experience that someone would have gained can really give good insight into the way that they're building up their soft skills. But I think people need to continually learn. There's a number of different courses, lifelong learning, to develop your soft skills, and that's something I think every individual, be it someone entering their career and also seasoned, experienced individuals, should be looking to continue to develop. As the world and in the environment, the workplace is changing, soft skills are also evolving at the same time.
And I have the last question, which is maybe a little tough one. So there are many people from other countries, from Asia, for example, who are coming here to Luxembourg, and they might be maybe more attractive to employers sometimes, because let's say comparing to Europeans, maybe they have a different understanding of work and life balance. Sometimes, well, the payment issue here is also like the salary sometimes can be considered lower, and so our attendee is asking if she can still compete with these newcomers, being a European, with her better experience.
It depends on each role, I think, that you're going for and how relevant it is for that particular position. How you compete, again, it can be based on your experience, your soft skills, your background, and really what is it you're looking to drive your career and which direction. And I think that's down for the individual to articulate clearly what is that they're looking for and the benefits to the employer of that experience and how relevant it is. So I think every case is judged slightly differently. If they see the opportunity that they can utilize that experience, then of course it will be a really good advantage. But again, it depends on each role, on what they would be looking for. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yes, I hope it did. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today, and for all your insights that you shared, for your time, and enjoy your evening, enjoy your working week, and thank you everyone for joining us today, and stay tuned for our next webinars. Thank you.
Thank you very much.